Hey guys, how are you? So I just listened to a podcast about narcissists and I decided to share my story about how I dated a narcissist um even 6 years ago and I didn't realize that he was a narcissist. So I realized that the patterns are this. In the beginning, they want to be liked because they haven't received a lot of love to begin with. So the patterns are they will show their best self and show that they're on your good side. So for me, what I experienced was um, I went on a date with someone who basically was really loving and kind, and he would I think a lot of times guys and girls show their best self on the first date because they don't want to be rejected. And the thing is, I show all parts of myself, right? And maybe there's a part of everyone that wants to be loved and liked, but so I'll just talk about this specific individual. Um, so I wanted to go to the beach, and so he brought me to the beach, and he had everything set up. Like he had food and he had drinks and he had a blanket and he had umbrellas and a chair and everything, and I thought like, "Oh my gosh, like no guy has ever done this to me or done this for me." So, I wanted to share this story with you because um I think it really showed me like just how much people can have a mask on, and it's really important to see like to understand people throughout time. So basically the second day he told me that he still lived with his ex-girlfriend and that they were broken up and that she still lived in the same house with her. So at one point basically he said that I don't think it's a good idea that you come over. Um so I was like, okay. And already I was seeing like red flags, like, okay, why didn't you tell me that you still live with your ex the first date? Right? So he's like, oh, well, she rents a room from my house, right? So basically, the third date, I met his ex and his roommate, who was really rude to me and basically shut the door in my face. So I was really hurt and I was like, "Oh, why are they so rude to me?" He admitted to me that he did not tell them that I was coming over and that they have a policy that basically that they're supposed to tell each other if they're going, you know, if they're going to invite people over because of the virus. So I was like, okay, that's understandable that they're scared of the virus, they're scared of people coming over, but there's no need to be rude. But as we saw each other more, I was like, well, one day I had a dream that the ceiling was basically falling on top of me and I couldn't get out. And I was like, "God, what's happening?" Like, "God, you're obviously warning me because this like to listen to my heart." And like through that experience I really learned, man, like you have to trust your instincts. Like if you don't feel good around this person, like learn to cut it off. And so basically as we went on more dates, like at one point he was like, "Well, I want you to get tested for the COVID because you've been out interacting and I didn't know that you go to people's houses. I don't want you to go to people's houses, so and so forth." And so he told me a lot of like sob stories about his past, like with his ex-wife. And at first, I was like, wow, okay, he's so wounded. Like, I'm gonna have compassion on him. Like, God sent me here to love him. But eventually that came out as like, oh my gosh, he's so wounded that he's hurting me with his words. And so, like, even towards the end, like when I would cry, he would tell me to grow the F up. And I would be shocked by his language because how did someone go from really sweet to really toxic? And so it's like you can honestly like tell someone like, oh, hey, don't be in this kind of relationship, or don't even see someone like that. Or you can go through it and be like, oh crap, like I don't deserve this. So I have a friend right now who's dating someone who's being very derogatory and verbally abusive towards him. And I told him, like, hey, you don't need to be with anyone who doesn't respect you. Anyone. And the thing is, like, everyone wants to be their best self and their best image in front of others so they can be liked. And so that's what I see. Like, a narcissist will basically present their best self so that you believe that they love you and like you, and you believe that that they will almost like compromise who they are in the beginning, and they will do anything to win your heart, to make them seem like they're the best guy out there, right? And like, you say, like, you complain about other people and they'll be like, I'm not like that. And most of the guys I've been on dates with, they will pretend that they are not like any other guy, and they will say that, but they will prove to be wrong. They will prove that they are like other guys. So words are nothing. Actions speak louder than words. And that's something that I said to this guy a lot. Like, I'm like, actions speak louder than words. So I get the COVID test, and even then I was like, oh great, I get to see you. But then a part of me was like, I feel like I'm changing for this person. Like, this is already a red flag. Like, God, what am I doing? I was like, God, take him out of my life if he's not it. Like, and he was even talking about marriage. Like, the third date that we met, he's like, if we get married, like, I wouldn't want you to work. You don't have to work. I want to take care of you, blah, blah, blah. And now looking back 6 years ago, my ex was exactly like that. He was making plans, specific plans for my life without talking to me about it. Like, oh, so I want to live in a gated community that costs millions of dollars, and I want you to have an SUV, and I want you to be a soccer mom, and you can do yoga every day and just relax. And I was thinking to myself, like, I know that's not the life that God wants for me, because I want to travel, I want to speak all around the world, I want to write books, I want to, like, be this very influential speaker, coach, prophet, minister. I don't want to just live in a community that's gated and submit to my husband like that, in that way. He was planning my life out without my permission. And so, of course, again, he was not Christian. And that's the reason that, it's like, I think I wrote a blog post about this, but there are 5 things that you should look for. You should have the same beliefs about God. You should be, if you're spirit-led, spirit-filled, he should be spirit-led, spirit-filled. Why? Because if a guy is not spirit-filled, spirit-led, they don't hear God's voice, their decisions are going to be based on reality, not faith. So, for example, like, say, like, God tells you to move somewhere, are you going to move? That's simple as that. Like, are you going to listen to God's voice or to the voice of logic and reason? But the voice of faith and prophecy is, if God tells you something, then you move on that. You move on something that you can't see, but you move on it based on faith. And the thing is, a guy who's not Christian, who's not spirit-filled, I am not talking about guys who say that they're Christian but don't really listen to God's voice or don't have a relationship with God. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about churchgoers. I'm talking about spirit-filled, spirit-led believers, that they're going to move on what God has told them. But someone who's not Christian or who's not spirit-filled or spirit-led, they're not going to listen to God when God says, hey, I don't want you in this company. I don't want you in this city. Move on my word and obey, because I have better for you. So even though a part of me would be like, you know what? Maybe someday he'll become Christian, or maybe, it's like, no. Like, if they don't listen to God's voice, they don't listen to God's voice. You don't have to convince them. They're not going to change. They're going to change on a miracle of God, but they're not going to change for you. Like, just expect that. And I think sometimes women can be too optimistic and be like, you know what? Maybe one day he'll change. Maybe. And it's like, it's one thing to put your faith in God, and it's another to put your faith in the fact that they might change. Does that make sense? It's like, God, I release this person to you, and I pray that they will know you one day, or they'll change, or they'll listen to your voice, or they'll come to you. But for you to marry or even date someone that isn't actively obeying God's voice, that's another. So I just want to encourage you, Christian women or spirit-filled, spirit-led believers, that the ways of this world are not the ways of God. So people who are earthly and who don't put the kingdom first, I mean, even this guy that I went on dates with, he was telling me like, oh, your way of living is chaotic. Like, I would never live like you. Yeah, of course it's chaotic to other people, because I listen to God's voice and I pass their lost sheep and I go where the Spirit leads me. So of course it's chaotic. That makes sense? Of course it looks crazy to people. So don't allow your desire to be accepted by someone basically make you compromise what it is that you need in a relationship. Because in the beginning, he was like, I totally believe that you're a prophet. I believe this and blah, blah, blah. I believe, like, and I believe in God, blah, 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 even. But he was just saying it to make me happy. Okay. So again, actions speak louder than words. So at the last time, like, I went over and I was rushing to see him because I'm like, oh, I just got the COVID test, and like my desire to see him, right? And then his roommates and his ex-girlfriend was in the porch area, and he was like, well, let's hang out with my roommates. And I was like, well, I rushed over here to see you, and you're going on a camping trip, so I'm not gonna see you. And I just want like alone time with you. And he's like, well, let's not disrespect my roommates. And I'm thinking like, okay, first of all, I don't see you for a few days. I get the COVID test and it freaking sucks. That test sucks. Okay, I'm negative. I even put on a mask to see you. And now you're making an excuse like, oh, like, let's spend time with my roommates. I'm like, what is going on? So at that point, I'm in the patio area, and I just feel in my heart like I need to confront his roommates about how they treated me. So I'm like, hey, I know we just met, but I just want to tell you how I felt when I first met you guys. I felt really hurt that you guys like seemed really rude to me. And so one of the roommates, which I know that she probably had a crush on him, said, I don't have an obligation to be nice to you. And I was like, whoa. So he comes out and he's like, oh crap. Like, she's confronting them. And I told her not to confront them because it's not going to go well. He said to me. But I said, if I feel in my heart to speak my truth, I'm going to speak my truth. But get this, at many points, I remember he picked me up and his son was in the car and he goes, I was like, I need to cry. And he's like, you can't cry in front of my son, because then I'll have to explain to him why you're crying. And I'm the dad, so I get to control that. I get to control. And I go, you know what? Drop me back home so I can cry alone. Because I'm not going to let someone tell me how to feel. And honestly, it was about 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks. But honestly, everything that I need to speak up about, I spoke up about. Unlike my past relationship 6 years ago where I was young and I never been in a long-term relationship, so I didn't know how to speak up for myself. And like, so those 2.5 years, the same pattern, right? This guy, like, he's very attached, he's very clingy, he always comes to see me, does the right things, brings flowers, says all the right things, and you think like, "Oh my god, like, this person really loves me, likes me." And then that's when we decided to be exclusive, after 1 week, I was, like, 23 back then, he disappeared for 2, 3 days. And I was like, "Oh, wait, what? I'm confused." So he did everything to win me over, then he disappears for 2, 3 days, and then tells me, "Oh, he needs space. Oh, he's busy." Right? And then my emotional needs are not met, and they weren't really met for 2.5 years. And I thought that was normal. I was like, "I don't wanna be clingy, I don't wanna seem needy, so I'm not gonna, like, I guess, like, I'm not gonna pursue him. I don't wanna seem like one of those clingy girls that has, like, too many needs." And again, that came from childhood where my dad didn't raise me. Oh, hey. That's so weird because my ex-best friend had the name Renee. So, but anyways, glad to meet you. Yeah, so I was like, I didn't speak up for my needs, and, like, I thought it was normal, and so again, it came from my dad not being around. Like, I didn't see him for 10 years. And when I did go to Taiwan to see him, I felt like I didn't want to impose on him. I didn't wanna have too many needs, and the one need I had was if I needed cash or money, and I would ask my dad, he'd be like, "I don't have much money." Like, "Don't you have money of your own?" Blah, 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 and I'm thinking like, "Okay, dad, you didn't raise me for 32 years, you didn't give me any money, and I had to basically work since I was 8 years old. It's not too much to ask for to give me some money so I can buy food or whatever, to just show some kind of support, some kind of love." And so I remember having a dream where, like, in this dream, my dad, like, I was like, "Hey, dad, can I have some money?" And he had, like, a stash of money, and he's like, "No." And so my aunt was like, "Give her money." So when I woke up, this is what I heard: "I'm a burden." And I started sobbing. I started sobbing because, like, growing up, my mom was a single mom, and she couldn't afford rent or anything. I had to help sometimes. So I started working really early on because I didn't want to be a burden on her. So when God told me to start ministering to people and I had to ask for donations, I felt like, "Oh my God, I'm being a burden on people." But God was like, "No, like, people will be blessed for blessing you. So people will be blessed for blessing you." And there's also a verse that talks about, you know, God blesses those who help the fatherless. So, anyways, the point is, I was so used to, like, my dad not being around, and, you know, for a guy just to show up in any way was, like, amazing. Like, "Oh, you showed up for me physically, like, you showed up at my door, like, you're next to me, like, even though emotionally you're somewhere else, there's a person. There's a person next to me." So to me, that was more awesome than just the fact that my dad didn't raise me. Yeah, and so that, Ash, comes from a fear of rejection, because for me, like, I would be scared to say that, like, for example, like, if a guy was, like, ghosting me, I would be like, "Oh," I would say like, "Oh, well, you know what? Like, if he's gonna ghost me, I'm gonna ghost him." Or, like, I wouldn't call them out on their crap. But now, like, God has shown me, like, it's okay to show that you're upset. It's okay to show you're sad. It's okay to voice how you feel, because of my dad being absent most of my life, I felt like I was numb emotionally and I couldn't speak up for myself. And because of that, I couldn't feel my emotions at all. So I was like completely shut down. And when I needed to cry, I didn't, like, even yesterday. I had to go food. I ordered it, and like I just kept hearing like go out, and I was like, huh? Like, God, what do you mean? I don't want to go out right now, God. Like, I just keep getting disappointed, and I keep stepping out in faith, and I'm so tired of doing that, God. Like, you are literally, like, pushing me to the brink. So, finally, I had diarrhea, I had a stomach ache, and I was like, "God, what the heck?" And then, a girlfriend of mine calls me, and I just start crying, and I was like, "Oh, I was suppressing my emotions." And I was like, "Yeah, I was watching this show about this girl who's 30, she's single, and she goes through the ups and downs of dating." And I'm like, "I'm just, like, tired and exhausted, and I feel disappointed by this whole dating process." Like, I'm like, "God, when is it over? Like, when am I done healing from my daddy issues?" Like, it's like, when am I gonna stop seeing the cycle of, like, these men who are very absent, right? And when am I gonna meet my husband, God? I'm just like, and then it's like people will say, like, we just gotta be patient. I'm like, I'm 32, I've been patient. I'm waiting till marriage to have sex. Like, how patient can I get? Like, also, it's like not really fair because I feel like I didn't choose to grow up with my set of parents. I didn't choose to have a dad who wasn't there. Like, how, you know what I mean? And another thing that pisses me off is when I talk about my dad and people are like, "Don't give up on him." And I'm thinking, like, first of all, like, even this year, like, God would tell me to call him or message him, and a part of me was like, "What's the point? He's not gonna answer." And guess what? He didn't answer. I probably sent like 20 messages. I probably called like 20 times in 1 year or even more. And the only thing he wrote was wear a mask. So, like, and the biggest thing that God helped me overcome was the fear of rejection or the fear of him not answering. And it's like, it's not for my dad that I'm writing him, it's for myself. Like, I can't be afraid of what he thinks or what people think. I need to do what it is that in my heart that I feel to say or do. So there are times I'm like, "Oh, I actually really miss him." So I would write, "Hey, I miss you, Dad." Oh, there were times I was like mad at him. "Hey, Dad, I just want to say I'm really pissed off at you because you don't ever reply to my messages." So that has actually opened up my heart to say to God how I need to say things or to be honest with people, right? So one of the things that I would do growing up, like with my friend, is she would like wrong me and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, it's okay. I forgive you." Like, I forgive you. And but deep down, I was still mad. And I'm like, "Why did I do that?" You know what I mean? Like, why would I just say that to make her happy? Glad to meet you too. Like, why would I do that just to make her happy? It's like, oh, because I don't want her to be displeased with me. I didn't want her to leave me. I don't want my friends to think bad about me. So I didn't express anger. I didn't express being displeased so that I can keep them. But what happened was they always thought that I was forgiving and they stepped over my boundaries a lot. Um, and my needs were not being met. My emotional needs were not being met. My financial needs were not being met. I was exhausted. I was worn out. I was constantly giving of myself and not receiving anything, and like this one friend, like she would vent to me, but she was really rude when she did it. She's like, "Oh, I'm just so sorry. I'm in a bad mood." Yes, I'm 32. Yeah, I'm actually a prophet. Um, so anyways, the point is, so at the end of all this, okay, so continuing on with that story about the guy. So so he's like, "I told you not to confront them," and I start crying. I start crying because the girl's like, "Well, he's the one that didn't tell us that you were coming over. So it's between you and him." And I'm like, "Okay." She doesn't understand that I'm talking to her about how she's treated me and she's not acknowledging that. So I felt hurt. And so anyways, I start crying, and then, like, I walk away, and his ex comes to comfort me, and she's like, "I've dated him before. You deserve so much better. I'm with a guy, um, that treats me way better." And I'm like, "Okay," like, and so he doesn't even come down. He doesn't follow me, and I'm like, "Wow, this is the last straw," right? So he comes down. No, so I was like, "Hey, come down here right now, like, I'm leaving." So he comes out, he tries to talk to me, but he goes from defensive to, like, trying to be sweet, you know? He's just like, "Oh, what, you're gonna cry again? You cry so much, I don't even know, like, if it's real." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" Like, so we get into this confrontation, and I tell him how I feel, and he goes, "You effed up. You confronted my roommates, and I told you not to. You never listen." And I was like, "What?" Like, I'm being honest and truthful about how I feel with these people, and you're telling me that I can't. Like, that I need to listen to you, right? And I understand that he was trying to, like, protect me maybe, but I'm like, I'm not gonna, like, I'm a prophet. I'm not gonna live in fear of people and what they think. So another thing he told me was like, "What do you think my point in life is?" He says, and I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "To better their lives. So I'm gonna tell white lies to make their lives better." So I'm like, "So you basically lie to people, and like, you judge the situation based on your knowledge, so you don't tell them the truth." And he's like, "Yeah." And so at the end, like, I went home, like, crying, and he grabbed my phone and deleted his number from my phone and all our text messages. And so I got home, and I was, like, devastated, right? I was like, "Okay, God, at least you exposed him. Now I can, like, be apart from him." But I left my jacket, so I found his IG, and I texted him, and I was like, and then I kept trying to, like, I kept hoping that maybe we could come and have closure, like, we could, like, be on good terms, you know? So I try to tell him how I felt. I said, "Hey, I really didn't like you, like, blah, blah." I mean, we even said, like, "I love you," and he's like, "I never even said that to my ex." So, of course, like, in my heart, I was like, "Oh my god," like, you know, "he loves me," and again, actions speak louder than words. I know, right? I'm like, "Are you serious?" And, so he was like, every time I wrote him, like, he would come back with something so negative. He would say, like, "You're a fake Christian. You're a fake Taiwanese Christian." I don't know why he said that specifically, like, the race of me, but he also said, like, "You're gonna burn for your sins." He's like, "We don't forgive you." He's like, and I'm like, "What did I ever do to you and your son?" Like, I just expressed how I felt, and, like, you you talk to me like I murdered someone. And first of all, he would use his son a lot to kind of, like, protect himself. He's like, "Oh, like, I'm the king, and my son is the prince," and all this stuff. And honestly, like, I don't wanna, like, gossip about him or anything, because I think that would be hurtful if he saw it, but at the same time, like, I just wanna share my experience because I feel like it will help women, um, because I feel like women put it up with a lot of things thinking that, "Oh, but I like this person, I feel attached to this person, so I'm gonna compromise, like, these things," when those things are actually really, really essential and important, and something that you should not overlook. Like, that's part of who he is. He's not apart from how he acts. He is how he acts, you know? And none of us are perfect, but we can't make excuses for people like that, because you're putting yourself in danger, basically, emotionally, physically. So at the end, he was just attacking me, verbally on IG, like DM. So I basically, I would block him, be like, "No, maybe he'll change. Maybe he'll, like, want to have a conversation." I'm like, "Can we at least talk on the phone or in person? Like, can we just come to terms with what's going on?" Like, something. Like, I wanted some kind of closure where we're like, okay, yeah, we did like each other, but like we're not fit for each other. But the more I wrote him and said that, oh, I felt hurt by what he said, the more he attacked me. So at one point, I was like, God, this is so hard. I had to block him. I did. And then, of course, I went back and was like, oh, where's his IG? Where's his number? Like, I want to talk to him, because even though he was mean, a part of me still wanted to talk to him. Like, what is wrong with me, right? But I think it's how he treated me in the beginning that I felt like, oh, like, he's not really like that. Like, he's really like his best self. Like, that's just like a demon coming out. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, but I was like, yeah, he was so nice to me. He was this and that. But like, okay, if someone's gonna treat you bad, it's their true self coming out. Like, well, none of us are perfect, but don't make excuses for people. Like, especially not for someone you're gonna date and marry. Like, and I knew like he was my husband, but there was something that made me feel really attracted towards him, and I think it was because he was a dad, and he was a really good dad, and I just thought like, oh, like, I want someone who's fatherly and who knows how to take care of his kids and things like that. And so now I realize, like, look, if he's not honest with people around him, he's not gonna be honest with me. So just be aware of that. And anyways, that's all. I hope that this video helped you in some ways. God bless you. I pray that God would free you from people who are narcissists or who lie, that you would just be honest with them about how you feel. Allow yourself to have those emotions, whatever it is, of hurt, pain, bitterness, anger. Exactly. Yeah, he would like try to shut me down and be like, yeah, like, why do you cry so much? Like, you need to control yourself. And it's like, yeah, you're so right about that. Like, yeah, add me on Instagram. I want to talk to you. Do you live in LA? That'd be cool to meet up. So anyway, so I pray that, God will protect you and that you would learn how to speak up for yourself. Because for me, that was the biggest lesson, is like, this is the same person, but in another form. Oh, Texas, I'll go visit you. So it's like this person, like, coming in the form of another name. Basically, it's like the same person. And it's like, are you going to stand up for yourself? Are you going to submit to fear and just not speak up and compromise? Or are you going to speak up for yourself and pass that test? Because essentially it's a test. Like, you need to pass it. You need to speak up for yourself in that situation. And you're like, oh, I've been in this situation before where, like, I really wanted a guy to like me. So I did what he wanted me to do. And I, like, suppressed how I felt so I could be pleasing to him. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, like, any form of, like, fear of, like, not being able to speak up has to do with, like, a spirit of fear. So the biggest fears that people have is about being vulnerable, being honest about how they feel with relationships and people in their lives. We don't realize that fear isn't just like, oh, like talking to strangers or whatever. Fear exists in our relationships. Because when you're not able to be vulnerable and honest in a relationship, that's where it gets messed up. So sometimes we compromise ourselves because we want to be liked by someone. Because, yay! Yay! Thank you. I'm so glad we're friends now. Yeah, I've totally been like looking for girlfriends. I'm like, oh, I need more girlfriends. It can get very lonely. Okay. So I've tried to help my ex best friend with speaking up for herself, but it was very destructive because I would somehow get involved in her relationships and, like, try to speak up for her or tell her what to say because she would be like, "Oh, I don't know what to say." Or, like, this guy would be cussing her out and texting her awful, awful things. And I'd be like, "Hey, you need to call him and tell him how you feel." And when she would call him, she'd be like, "Hello, hi." Like, like nothing was wrong. And I'm like, "You were just super pissed at him, and now you're acting like nothing's wrong, and you're letting him manipulate you." It got to the point I was like, "You know what? I can't help you anymore." Like, I'm trying to, but you need to speak up for yourself. You need to set boundaries. Like, I can't do that for you. No one can. And, like, that's basically my purpose, is really to deliver people from fear, but to coach them in learning how to speak up for themselves. Because I just see people get into these very toxic relationships and not know how to get out. So I guess my purpose is really to help people get out of fear, right? So, anyways, I pray that this video helped you in some ways, and God bless you. I love you guys, and consider, like, sowing a seed into this ministry. You can do that on the front page of my YouTube or my website. And remember to subscribe to my website. I'm gonna write it right here. And yes, Ash, I will talk to you on Instagram, and then we can, like, video chat or whatever. God bless. Bye.